My name is Mary Austin. I'm a long-term friend of Freddie's.
For 33 years, Mary Austin kept Freddie Mercury's biggest secrets. She watched him date men while living in his mansion. She held his hand as he died from AIDS. She inherited his entire fortune worth millions. But there was one secret even darker. In 2024, after selling his home for $30 million, Mary finally spoke the truth. What she revealed about their relationship shocked the world. The truth about what really happened between them is finally coming out. Mary Georgina Austin was born on 6th of March 1951 in a small flat above a cobbler's shop on Fulham's North End Road. That same week, Britain's coal rations were cut again, and her family felt the struggle deeply. Her parents, Alfred and Rita, were both deaf, so their home was filled with fingerspelling instead of sound. Even their Bakelite alarm clock was one they could feel rather than hear. The rent was $2.10 a week, but it was often unpaid, forcing them to pawn blankets each winter just to afford a hundredweight of coal that lasted only about 3 evenings. By the time she was 7, Mary was already helping her parents with utility bills and even bartering leftover bread at market stalls for bruised fruit. Growing up in a silent household sharpened her attention. Teachers noticed she could lip-read 3 conversations at once, yet she spoke so softly that classmates had to lean in to hear her. That quiet pull would one day catch the attention of Freddie Mercury. By 1966, London was alive with color, but Mary, only 15, was earning $3 a week working at Biba's famous fashion store in Kensington. She spent her days pinning velvet mini-dresses onto mannequins bound for stars like Twiggy, while surviving on tea made with evaporated milk and shared cigarettes in the stockroom. Marianne Faithfull and Mick Jagger were among the customers she brushed past, tape measure in hand, pretending to be professional while secretly noticing that some dresses cost more than her father made in a month. But Biba was more than a job. She memorized Pantone colors, sketched window displays in a worn notebook, and practiced signing fashion terms to her parents at night. When the founder, Barbara Hulanicki, once praised her sense of color, Mary wrote in her diary that it was proof she could be more than just the deaf girl's daughter. That small moment kept her dreaming through the long hours, surrounded by clothes she could never afford. In January 1968, she enrolled in evening classes at Regent Street Polytechnic, determined to build a better future. The tuition was $6 per term, half of what she made in a year. To cover it, she cleaned Mayfair offices late at night, scrubbing cigarette burns from carpets until 1 in the morning after finishing her shift at Biba. She managed only 5 of 18 classes before falling behind on payments. One night, she collapsed on the Piccadilly line, waking up at Cockfosters with bloodied knuckles from gripping her mop too tightly. She ended up in Charing Cross Hospital for exhaustion. With no refund policy, she had paid for lessons she never completed. Quietly, she tore up her registration slip and told herself she would learn from life instead. Years later, she would write down Freddie's lyrics by hand while he sang them, proving she had never needed those shorthand classes after all. In the spring of 1969, while working at a small boutique inside Kensington Market, Mary met a lanky young man who strode in with dramatic energy. He dropped a cravat on the counter and declared that it needed reinventing. The price tag read 10 shillings. When she quoted it, he argued loudly, sparking laughter from nearby stallholders. Mary calmly replied that if he could redesign it so brilliantly, then surely he could afford it. Their eyes locked across a pile of paisley until he finally handed over the money, adding tuppence for her trouble, before sweeping out with his cape swirling behind him. Only later did she learn his name, Farrokh Bulsara, an art student and aspiring rock singer. That quick encounter over a scarf would change both their lives. A week later, he returned and invited her to a small Italian restaurant on Earl's Court Road. He ordered Chianti, calamari, and tiramisu, which came to $4.12, more than she made in a week. Over dinner, he sketched ideas for album covers on the paper tablecloth, explaining how he believed opera and rock could come together. Mary admitted she knew little about either, but was drawn to his certainty. When the bill came, he put on a playful show, digging through his pockets before producing a single $5 note, tipping the waiter with the change. At the bus stop, he told her that one day he would take her to restaurants without prices on the menu. Within 5 years, that promise came true when Queen's first gold record allowed them to share a flat on Holland Road. The place they rented at 26 Holland Road cost $10 a week and barely felt livable. The room had cracked walls, no heat, and a carpet chewed by mice. To keep rats from crawling onto the bed, Mary balanced the mattress on old milk crates. At night, she heard the scratching of rodents under them. The kitchen was nothing more than a coin-fed hot plate placed on top of a wardrobe, where she stretched a single tin of beans into 2 meals. Freddie worked on songs deep into the night, at a battered upright piano that was always a semitone flat. Mary pinned blankets over the windows so neighbors would not complain about the 3 a.m. music. On Fridays, she quietly used $3 from her $9 BIBA wages to pay for Queen's rehearsal space, never telling the band she was the reason the lights stayed on. During the winter of 1972, frost formed on the inside of the windows, and she joked that the first notes of 7 Seas of Rye were played in visible breath. By 1971, the two of them had opened a small stall in Kensington Market called Bling, Bang, and Glitter. The rent was $2.50 a day. Mary bought second-hand 1930s gowns from Portobello Road, cut them apart, and turned them into bold tops inspired by Freddie's sketches. On their best Saturday, they made $38, more than Freddie earned in a month working at a grocery store. Mary even stitched Freddie's now iconic Harlequin jacket on a borrowed Singer sewing machine. One of her most ambitious pieces was a white satin cape with 96 silver eyelets, which cost them $4.72 to make, but was later insured for $12,000 during Queen's 1976 tour. Brian May later said the money from their stall helped him buy his first Vox AC30 amp, crediting Mary with making it possible for Queen to grow. When the band secured late-night recording time at Trident Studios, Mary was the only outsider invited. On 15th of December 1972, she sat beside the mixing desk, while Freddie layered vocals for Keep Yourself Alive, holding her breath so the microphones would not catch any sound. She kept careful notes of tape counter numbers each time he made a mistake, becoming the unpaid log keeper of the session. At one point, Freddie asked if his vocals sounded grand or ghastly. Mary assured him they were grand, giving him the confidence he needed. Producer John Anthony later said her calm presence did more for Freddie's nerves than any studio trick could. She carried the acetate home at dawn, wrapped carefully in her only wool coat. Mary also handled the band's money when there was hardly any. She kept their ledger in a small cash book, showing weekly expenses of $22 against an income of only $11. She convinced a music shop on Tottenham Court Road to lease them a PA system for 60 pence a day, payable after gigs. Many nights they ate only because Mary brought day-old Chelsea buns discarded from Biba's cafe. In July 1973, the band's van broke down on the way to Torquay. Mary pawned her grandmother's locket for $15 to cover repairs, finally retrieving it months later when Queen received their first record advance. By the end of that year, she managed to save $47,000 in a joint account for the band at National Westminster Bank in Kensington. At Christmas in 1973, Freddie proposed with a modest 9-carat gold ring he bought for $12 at a pawnbroker. After a concert at Hammersmith Odeon, he led her onto the empty stage, knelt, and asked if she would be his wife once Queen's success could support them. She agreed, but insisted they wait until the band earned a gold record. When Freddie bought Garden Lodge for $500,000 in early 1977, Mary thought the Georgian villa would be their forever home. Yet within months, the 28-room house felt less like theirs and more like a private stage. Freddie filled it with treasures: an 18th-century Chippendale dining suite, a pair of Louis XVI gilt mirrors he bought at Christie's for $9,800, and a wall-sized Andy Warhol print. Weekend deliveries of antique statues arrived so often that the local movers nicknamed the house Versailles West. Mary later admitted she sometimes hid in the attic flat she had once called a bedsit because she no longer recognized the rooms downstairs. By late 1978, Freddie's growing circle of artists, club owners, and Japanese dealers treated Garden Lodge like an after-hours salon. Mary, who had once chosen simple cream curtains for the windows, now felt like a guest who had forgotten the password. Only a few years earlier, in 1975, Mary had shopped on Kings Road for second-hand Biba jackets that cost $3 each. 2 years later, she was sitting front row at Zandra Rhodes's spring show in a $480 O.C. Clark gown. The sudden change in her wardrobe showed the power of rock star money, but not her comfort. She confessed to a friend that she felt like a cardboard cutout in couture. At the A Star is Born premiere in Leicester Square on 14th of January 1977, photographers shouted Freddie's name while Mary stood half a step behind, dressed in emerald satin and Cartier earrings, clutching a bag she had borrowed from Queen's stylist. Backstage at the Forum in Inglewood that December, roadies teased her about her $300 Manolo heels sinking into cables. She laughed, but in her diary she wrote, "Everyone else is wearing the costume. I feel like I am the costume." The glitter made her visible, but it also reminded her how far she had drifted from the shy shop girl who once patched up Freddie's jeans. Mary had what every fan dreamed of: a pass that gave her access everywhere. She saw Freddie test Somebody to Love at Hyde Park on 18th September 1976, tape a silver star to his chest for Earl's Court on 7th June 1977, and perfect the mic stand twirl that would define Live Aid 8 years later. From the wings, she noticed more private moments too, like after the encore in Houston on 11th December 1977, when Freddie skipped their usual champagne and instead left with a group of club regulars. On the Japan tour the next spring, she realized that post-show invitations now listed only one guest, Mr. Mercury, and a +1. When she asked if she should book her own flight home, Freddie kissed her forehead and said, "Book 2 seats. I might join you, darling." She took the hint and flew alone. The cheers of 20,000 fans could not hide the silence between two people who had once shared a single takeaway pizza in a tiny bedsit. Freddie's love for art grew into an obsession during 1977 and 1978. He spent $72,000 on Edo period lacquer, $14,500 on a Meiji cloisonné charger, and $5,000 a week at Hayashi Kimono in Ginza. Sotheby's later found 17 separate auction catalogs in Garden Lodge, each marked in Freddie's neat handwriting with phrases like "must have" or "show Mary." He often asked her opinion on prints, but would then outbid himself moments later. Mary admitted the pieces were beautiful, yet the constant flow felt overwhelming. She once said his inner sanctuary seemed more like a museum with no closing hours. The turning point came when a 1.8-meter bronze of the thunder god Raijin was lowered into the garden at 3 a.m. Freddie's latest indulgence, costing $11,200. Standing in the drizzle as the statue swung over the roses, Mary thought, "He's building a world I don't have the map for." One March night in 1976, Garden Lodge fell unusually silent. Just after midnight, Freddie paced between the Japanese screen and the bay window before saying the 4 words that would change Mary's life: "I think I'm bisexual." He was 29, Queen had just topped the U.S. charts with Bohemian Rhapsody, and months of touring had forced him to face questions he could no longer hide. Mary, who was 25, remembered in a 2013 interview that they talked until dawn. Freddie admitted crushes on male roadies during the American tour in 1975 and confessed his fear of the tabloids. Mary had noticed a postcard from a Munich club tucked into his jacket weeks earlier, but had dismissed it. The confession ended any illusion of a traditional future. That night, the green drawing room turned into neutral ground, where they began reshaping their bond in real time. Most partners in 1970s London might have reacted with anger, but Mary simply said, "I think you're gay, and that's all right." She later explained that she felt a duty to keep him emotionally alive by accepting him when he feared rejection. Instead of leaving, she opened a bottle of champagne left from a party and even suggested practical steps. Shopping trips to Soho, where Freddie could try more daring clothes. Code words like going antiquing for his private encounters. And a promise never to betray him to the tabloids that had already attacked David Bowie. Her calm support gave Freddie the space to explore clubs like Heaven and Bang in 1977 without sinking into shame. According to music journalist Leslie Ann Jones, Freddie later said Mary kept him from blowing everything up by making a public declaration before he was ready. Their relationship evolved into what they called the third way. They were no longer lovers, but more than friends. Freddie, who trusted almost no one, slipped lyrics under her door for feedback. She was the first to comment on Somebody to Love, suggesting the bridge was too long. While Queen toured, Freddie called her each night, paying reverse charges to share his fears about journalists digging into rumors from San Francisco. Mary would sit on his side of the bed with the phone, calmly easing his panic from across the ocean. By 1978, he told a Swiss interviewer that Mary was his household of trust, even though they had stopped being intimate almost a year earlier. Friends could not understand the arrangement, but it lasted longer than most marriages. Mary never moved out. They agreed on separate bedrooms, Freddie in the emerald green master suite, Mary in the lilac guest room, and a weekly Wednesday dinner where no topic was off-limits except Queen's finances. She managed the house while he toured, sorting fan mail, caring for his Japanese prince, and paying the bills. Freddie visited clubs late at night, and Mary waited up with tea to hear how it went. Brian May later said Freddie trusted Mary with the one thing that could have ruined him in that tabloid era: his secret life. Their home became both a sanctuary and a launchpad for his self-discovery. Mary's diary reveals that their last physical intimacy happened on 12 October 1977. After Queen finished recording News of the World, Freddie, thrilled with his vocals on Get Down, Make Love, invited her to celebrate. They kissed and spent the night together. At dawn, Mary felt it was a farewell to that closeness. She never spoke of it publicly until a private BBC interview in 1996, saying she would carry that dawn in silence. Their romantic chapter closed, but the bond remained unbreakable. In early 1985, only weeks after Queen's historic Live Aid performance, Mary Austin began noticing worrying changes in Freddie Mercury. He was losing weight, even though he was still rehearsing constantly, and bluish spots sometimes appeared on his arms. Doctors had begun linking such marks to Kaposi's sarcoma, one of the first signs of AIDS. Concerned, Mary went to London's Gay's The Word bookshop on March 4, 1985, and picked up every pamphlet she could find about what the press was calling the gay cancer. That same night, she wrote in her diary, "Freddie losing flesh on collarbones. Must research." The news around her only made the fear worse. By the end of that year, the UK had reported 2,348 AIDS cases and 1,320 deaths, more than half of those diagnosed. There was no effective treatment yet, so Mary knew that spotting symptoms early might be Freddie's only chance. she began keeping her own secret file at Garden Lodge, hidden away in a locked drawer. At the time, even whispering the word AIDS could ruin a person's career or friendships. During 1986 and 1987, Mary arranged medical visits in complete secrecy. She booked Harley Street appointments under the name Frederick Bulsara Mack and used her own phone number so no one could connect them. On February 22, 1987, she drove Freddie to Brompton Hospital at 5:45 a.m., choosing that time so staff would be changing shifts and less likely to notice him. When his test results came back positive on April 29, 1987, Mary moved quickly. She hired a courier to bring AZT from New York, still an experimental drug, and paid $7,600 for a 3-month supply that was routed through Amsterdam, so no British customs form would reveal Freddie's name. She even kept extra prescription pads in their Kensington safe, crossing out barcodes so pharmacies could not trace them. Quietly, she also made sure Queen's tour insurance covered unspecified chronic illness, a phrase that allowed for private medical flights without exposing Freddie's condition. Thanks to Mary's planning, Freddie gained not just privacy, but also time to keep recording. The burden of keeping the secret weighed heavily on her. From 1987 until November 1991, Mary held the truth while rumors spread. Tabloids ran long-lens photos of Freddie looking frail in April 1990, but she stuck to the explanation that he was exhausted from studio work. Freddie had begged her not to share the truth, warning that if one crack appears, the dam bursts. By 1990, newspapers were offering up to $500,000 for proof of his illness, equal to about $1.2 million today. But Mary refused every offer. She later described the pressure as feeling like she was guarding a nuclear core. Even the sound of a ringing phone could send her heart racing, afraid it might be a clinic calling by mistake. The stress took a toll. She lost 9 kilograms in 18 months and once stayed awake 72 hours straight before collapsing beside Freddie's bed. Still, she stayed silent until Freddie released his own statement on November 23, 1991. Despite his failing health, Freddie kept recording. From January to May 1991, Mary arranged evening sessions at Metropolis Studios so his daytime IV treatments wouldn't interfere. She used a kitchen timer to keep his takes to 25 minutes, since his lung capacity had dropped to 60%. On April 13, 1991, when he recorded the haunting lines of "The show must go on," Mary stood outside the booth, holding a glass of vodka mixed with fresh orange juice to help his throat. She also convinced producer David Richards to prepare mixes Freddie could approve from bed using a DAT Walkman. Thanks to her efforts, Freddie completed 18 vocal tracks that later appeared on the album Made in Heaven. Brian May later said the achievement was only possible because of Mary's careful scheduling. By October 1991, Freddie's T-cell count had dropped below 50, meaning full-blown AIDS. On October 20th, Mary moved into Garden Lodge permanently, turning the master suite into a private hospice. She managed a rotation of 5 carers, 2 nurses, and Jim Hutton, keeping close contact with Dr. Gordon Atkinson about his morphine doses. On November 10th, Freddie lost sight in his right eye, and Mary ordered blackout curtains so he would not be woken by the winter sun. She placed a bell on his bedside table so he could call for her whenever he needed medication, ice chips, or even help turning the pages of an art book. On November 22nd, she stood behind Jim Beach as Freddie dictated his final statement, then delivered it to Peter Freestone to be sent worldwide. On November 24th, 1991, at 6:48 p.m., Freddie died of bronchial pneumonia. Mary carried out his last wishes immediately, placing his cats beside him and playing Queen's Barcelona on a Sony CF580 boombox. 3 days later, she oversaw his private Zoroastrian funeral at Kensal Green Crematorium, costing $3,500 and attended by 35 people. Only Mary knows where his ashes were scattered, a promise she has kept since 1985. In February 2024, London estate agents Knight Frank quietly placed Garden Lodge on the market for offers over $30 million. The news shocked Queen fans because Mary Austin had kept the home almost exactly as it was since Mercury's death in 1991. She had preserved the citrus yellow dining room where he once held spontaneous parties, along with countless personal touches. Within 8 weeks, 3 wealthy collectors entered a sealed bid battle that pushed the final price to the full $30 million. Contracts were exchanged on May 27, 2024, with completion set for early July. The buyer used a Cayman Islands company to stay anonymous, and rumors quickly spread that the new owner might be a Middle Eastern royal who already owned Prince's former Purple House in Minnesota. For London's property market, the price meant about $5,000 per square foot, which was even higher than the average along the billionaire-filled Kensington Palace Gardens. Yet the most emotional moment came when Mary Austin left a farewell note pinned to the green door. She wrote, "I carried Freddie's absence in every room. It is time to set both of us free." At the bottom was a hand-drawn phoenix, echoing Mercury's emblem and symbolizing the end of her 33-year vigil. Only a few months earlier, in September 2023, Sotheby's had auctioned 1,400 items from Garden Lodge in 6 marathon sessions. The sale raised $40.1 million, or 4 times more than expected, setting a new record for a rock and roll collection. Bidders from 70 countries competed for pieces of Mercury's life. His silver snake bracelet sold for $705,000. His Tiffany mustache comb brought in $152 to $400. A graffiti-covered door from Garden Lodge fetched $412,000 with messages written in 33 languages. Some of the most surprising details came from the catalog notes approved by Austin. One early draft of Bohemian Rhapsody showed its original working title had been Mongolian Rhapsody. In the margins was a small sketch of Jimi Hendrix. Mercury's 1975 mirror ball stage cape was revealed to have hidden pockets for throat lozenges. Austin kept only 7 items for herself, including a jade antique Mercury had bought during their last trip to Kyoto. The sale was streamed live, attracting 1.2 million viewers, more than Queen's Wembley Stadium crowd in 1986. Brian May admitted he could not watch the auction, but Austin explained that it was Freddie's final performance, with the whole world in the front row. In June 2024, Queen's surviving members sold their entire music catalog to Sony Music for $1 billion, equal to about $1.27 billion. A clause in the deal gave Mary Austin 19% of Mercury's share as the executor of his estate. Analysts estimated her cut at about $187 million after taxes. That made her wealth larger than Sir Paul McCartney's reported $150 million and placed her among the 50 richest women in Britain. The money arrived in the same week that the Bohemian Rhapsody video passed 2 billion views on YouTube. Her advisors placed most of the funds into a Luxembourg family office, with investments ranging from green energy bonds to vintage Cartier jewelry, the same market she had influenced through the Sotheby's sale. Austin turned down offers for reality shows and a memoir, saying she had made a promise to Mercury in 1985. He had asked her to protect the mystery, warning that the music would die if the mystery ever did. After leaving Garden Lodge, Mary Austin slipped into what tabloids call a life of quiet wealth. People magazine reported that her neighbors in a small village near the Cotswolds had no idea she was the woman who once inspired Love of My Life. The home there is owned through a blind trust, and locals know her only by the initials ATLMJ. In April 2025, photographers at Heathrow spotted her boarding a flight to Zanzibar, Mercury's birthplace, but the photos disappeared within a day after being bought by an anonymous bidder. Her 2 sons avoid the spotlight and even use different names on electoral records, Close friends say she wears a vintage Patek Philippe watch that ticks in rhythm with the song Somebody to Love, a detail Mercury used to laugh about in the studio. Just as she once moved quietly behind the scenes while tens of thousands cheered for Freddie, she now lives in a way that lets the music shine while she remains almost invisible.